So welcome everybody. My name is Amber Norrish. I'm the Education Officer at the Bunbury Regional Art Gallery. I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are based on today, the Wardandi People of the Noongar Nation. I pay my respects to their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and this region. So today we have artist Stormie Mills with us to discuss his recent solo exhibition at the gallery, whose name was Writ in Water. Stormie has been a practicing street visual artist for over 3 decades and is best known for his whimsical, thought-provoking characters created from a restricted colour palette of black, white, grey and silver. His whimsical works are represented in galleries around Australia, and Stormie's private and public commissions light up streetscapes across the globe, from Bunbury to Perth to the UK, USA, Europe and Asia. He's been invited to participate in some of the world's most prestigious street art festivals and completed countless private and public art commissions. So welcome, Stormie. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
From your beautiful studio. So to start off with, can you tell us a bit about the John Keats quote you named your exhibition after and how you came across it?
Yeah, sure. It was a bit of it's a bit of a grand. I did my own, I guess, version of the grand tour, which John Keats was on when he fell terminally ill in Rome and passed away shortly thereafter at the age of 25. So Melissa and I had been to Italy on a few occasions by then, and a really good friend of mine, Gonzalo Barondo, was telling us about the non-Catholic cemetery and about going there, and suggesting it was one of the things we did. So we did, and in our research of looking for that cemetery, we discovered the fact that Keats was there, or his body is laid to rest there, and I'd seen it a few times, and I was intrigued by the fact that there's this epitaph for somebody whose name isn't on this tombstone, and the idea of someone's name being writ in water. In the past, I'd heard the phrase, "You can't step twice on the same piece of water," and so my intrigue was really based around the idea of being a young kid writing on walls, and how that, was a very non-permanent thing, as well as my own personal history and career and the things that I've done and seen. I knew that, life's not so permanent either. These things all collided, so it really resonated with me. So it sort of pushed me to want to explore this further, which is, again, what, I'm talking a couple of years ago now. So, and last year we went back to Rome specifically to look at John Keats, look at the museum that's at the bottom of the Spanish Steps, go back to that graveyard, which is, probably one of the most beautiful cemeteries you would ever get to in your life if you haven't. When people can travel, I would definitely recommend it. Yeah, it's amazing. It's beautiful, and it's all run by volunteers. It's full of cats that people come and donate to, and yeah, it's just an amazing contemplative space. So yeah, whose name was Writ in Water was Keats' directive, because he was so young and he felt like his life was over. Obviously it was over at such a young age. He thought that he hadn't lived long enough to achieve the things he wanted to achieve. And it's one of those sweet ironies, isn't it, that somebody says, this is what I want written on my tombstone, because I will never be famous for the things I did in this lifetime. That's one of the most famous things he did. So.
Oh, wow. And with your ideas around street art and just following on from that, its inherent lack of permanence, I really was resonated by that relationship with youth, and kind of your experiences with street art and youth Could you kind of talk a bit more about those ideas, that relationship?
Yeah. I guess that the phrase also that I guess there's lots of phrases and sentences and things that stick with me for whatever reason. One of them being "nothing lasts forever," but then there's such a beauty in those words, because I was watching. I don't know if you saw the Loonig documentary that was on the television last night.
Oh, what was it?
Yeah, he's like the tea and biscuit cynic.
Yeah, I've been seeing his work lately. It's cool.
It's such a, he does something so small and so gentle that there's so much sort of pain. I think perhaps I interpret it as excised in the way he does things. He has no real, I guess, he seems to think that he has no ability to change the world, but he does in such a gentle way. And I think when you're young, well, I certainly felt when I was young, like my world, I wanted it to be so different. I wanted to make, big changes to my existence and where I existed and all those sorts of things, so that when I discovered this idea of going out and making work on walls, it was revolutionary for me. What I also discovered was that it was not long lasting, or I felt it wasn't long lasting. And I've always been attached to the idea of the action is, for me as an artist, the action is the most important thing. After it's done, I'm not so bothered with how long it lasts for. But what's happened over time is that people care so much for it that they want to ensure it's longevity.
And preserve it.
And so for me, it's a bit like that. I know nothing will last forever. I think one of the things with my work is that it's a lot of the time I choose places and locations that have been neglected, and I want to paint people that look like they have been neglected in those spaces. And in a way, in a very odd little way, that sort of saves both those things.
With your characters, Stormie, and your writing in the exhibition, I feel they carry a weight of sadness, but also so much hope in reflecting the human condition. What is your process of coming up with your works? There seems like quite a personal snapshot of, or are they just a reflection of the world you see around you?
I think it's a combination of both of those things. I think, I guess I'm like all artists or people in general, or a lot of people in general, that, after all the body of work was finished and I was looking at it, like when it's being hung in the Bunbury Regional Art Gallery, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, Keats was one of the new romantics, and I didn't feel there was a whole lot of romance in what I had done. But then I also processed that and went, well, I am in love with those words. Those words created those images. There's another layer to this that I perhaps wasn't really seeing. When I was doing it, I was looking at each individual work. And I was doing all of these works were done in conjunction with reading the book. And there's a point where a flow happens, and that flow is one influences the other, that your next work, your next move is not predetermined until you finish the thing that's in front of you, and that focus provides you with the motion to move forward with something else. And I always try to do that with the idea that these are broken thoughts, or these are broken people, or these are broken images, and I'm trying to put them back together. I'm trying to help that thought process get back on its feet and carry on forward. And, for me, life is like that. It's glass half full. Lots of people have had their share of struggles, as have I. But if you want to let, and some people do, unfortunately, lay down and let it overtake them. I always sort of pushed forward no matter what, and been fortunate that people have helped me in that. So my way of giving back is that these images can be viewed by somebody and they see it and they have an affinity with it. And quite often it happens. People go, oh, that looks like you, or someone goes, that looks like my friend, da-da-da. Then yes, great, it's successful because they understand themselves as much as they understand the painting. And that is always about moving forward, always about getting back up off the floor. I love there's a Korean quote that if you get knocked down you get knocked down 8 times, you get up 9. So, yeah.
Oh, that's very powerful. I see your work everywhere in Bunbury and Perth streets and households, and now in the Bunbury Regional Art Gallery. Do you find exhibiting your work in different settings, such as a gallery, affects the way your audiences receive your work?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're very different audiences as well. I think there's when you're working on a wall in the street, I think to myself, quite often it's a passive audience, and I'm not like I've never been this kind of conquistador as an artist. I've never wanted to really roll into a new town and then do my thing and, do it in a big showy way and then force it upon other people. I've always wanted to kind of go in there and go, all right, what do I feel here? What do I think? What's the mood? How do I put that into an image and allow people to slowly digest and understand it? And so in that regard, it's kind of, I'm thinking that the audience is passive, but then over time that I feel that audience again, like they kind of get an ownership and it becomes their work, and they're no longer passive in that they're like the custodians. So the audience changes itself, I think. But that's a very different experience to creating work, a body of work for a gallery, because there's a lot more to look at. For a start, you're not just looking at one piece. You've got a whole bunch of stuff to look at, and you've got, again, a diversity. Like in the show, there's landscapes, there's found object that are that turn the work into 3-dimensional. There's text-based stuff, and there's the figurative stuff. So all of these things in that show are things that I would normally do, but excuse me, they haven't. They've never been put on show like that before. So the audience, I think, that comes to Bunbury Regional Art Gallery is coming to look at work specifically. And whether they're coming to look at my work or the other work that you have in there, I think their motivation is sort of different. They're not going down to the shop to get, some eggs and some milk and see a work on the way. Or, they live next door to it or down the street from it, that sort of thing. So they see it regularly. They're going there specifically to be entertained, to have their thoughts questioned, or to create new thoughts, change their perspective, or whatever it might be. They're an inquisitive audience, and I think there's lots of similarities in that work. They're going to look at a body of work. I think they have a slightly different motivation, and they need to be, not challenged could be one way of putting it, but certainly, I guess in that instance, I'm a protagonist in some ways, questioning things, and they're questioning my questions.
Yeah.
You'll have questions.
I love that. Stormie, we have a very strong street art scene in Bunbury, with more and more emerging artists experimenting with this art form. Do you have any advice for artists wanting to get into the street art scene? Or
Well, yeah, you have a very strong street art scene, in large thanks to people like Andrew Fraser, but certainly Andrew could never have done what he did in Bunbury without the people of Bunbury. And, I saw an amazing amount of support the first year, and certainly it had grown exponentially by the second year, which was just amazing. And, obviously you guys doing what you're doing, even encouraging and asking me to come there and show there, that all contributes to the I say two things. I say, one, be tenacious, and two, be polite. But and the third thing would be just start somewhere.
Yeah.
We live in such a world where everybody has this, like, everyone can have an opinion, and the greatest fear I think that comes from that is that you'll be judged. But I think you'll be judged anyway, so you may as well go out and do something. Young artists in particular, they have to start somewhere. And I could look back at, things that I was doing when I started painting in Perth in 1982 was when I first went out and painted a wall. If I had a photograph of what that first year might have looked like, of what I did in that first year, it probably would be cringing now, but it got me to here. One step leads to the other. And if you don't start, you'll just be like, I wish I had. And it comes back to that. It's cycle, isn't it? It's circular. It goes back to that thing. You want to make a mark on the wall. If you want to make a deep mark, you can make little shallow marks repeatedly. It eventually becomes a deep mark. So, go out and paint. If you don't like it, you could always paint over it the next week. You can do something better. You can improve. You can start somewhere. Yeah. Anybody, any artist in whatever endeavor they're doing, they have to begin. That's the hardest part.
And I think what a beautiful time to start while we're in self-isolation. I think it's kind of an interesting time to be having this conversation, because we are restricted to be going out and meeting people. It's kind of personally quite self-reflective and giving me time to kind of consider where you are as an artist and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And you'll see, like I've noticed, obviously I'm looking for it, but once you start looking, you'll see so much. People of all walks of life doing incredibly creative things, but doing it in such a way that there's such a kindness with it, like they're making stuff to give to other people, making stuff to make other people's lives better. And there's no greater endeavor than that. I mean, I was talking to an auntie of mine yesterday, and she lives in North Wales, and she's been knitting little knitted characters to give to her grandchildren. And other people have seen that and they're like, oh, that would be nice. We would. So she's like been inundated with requests to make these things for other people. And, it keeps her busy. It keeps her mind active. And it's doing something for somebody else. And she's, to my knowledge, I've known her my entire life. I've never known her to be creative, and all of a sudden she is. But she's also doing it in a way that is kind. So obviously I feel we're extremely lucky, and I feel extremely fortunate. That if there's an opportunity to do something kind and do something good for somebody else, I don't understand why you wouldn't.
Beautiful. Well, we'll finish up there, Stormie, but thank you so much, and what a lovely way to end. Thank you for your time. For people wanting to see more of your work, where can they see it?
Well, we have a the studio, my studio is in Northbridge, and we have a gallery space attached to that, which is on Stewart Street in Northbridge. So once everybody's safe and we're given the okay to open the doors again to other people, we're going to start doing that.
And we'll put the links.
Always Google till then.
Yes, Google. I was just going to say that we'll put the links to your Facebook and Instagram and website in the show notes. So thank you very much for your time. And we hope you keep safe and well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Stay well.